Picture the Caribbean in 1723. A vast expanse of blue water dotted with islands, trade winds carrying merchant vessels loaded with sugar, tobacco, and silver from the New World back to Europe. And somewhere in this maze of islands and shipping lanes, a single ship, black flag flying, crew of 90 men, captain standing on the quarterdeck watching the horizon. He's armed, 2 pistols, a cutlass, a dagger. Not because he's expecting naval vessels or merchant resistance. He's armed because of the men behind him, his own crew, the men he commands, the men who could vote him out of command at any moment, the men who could kill him and throw his body overboard and no one would ever know or care. This is the reality of pirate command that histories rarely mention. Pirate captains lived under constant threat, not from external enemies, from their own crews. Mutiny was the nightmare that haunted every decision, every order, every division of plunder. A captain who lost his crew's confidence didn't retire. He died, sometimes quickly with a pistol shot or a blade, sometimes slowly, marooned on a barren island with no food or water. Either way, the end was certain. This fear shaped everything about pirate operations, how captains behaved, how plunder was divided, how decisions were made. Understanding this fear is understanding the true nature of pirate society. Start with how someone became a pirate captain in the first place. It wasn't hereditary like nobility. It wasn't appointed by higher authority like naval commissions. It wasn't bought like merchant command. It was elected through direct democratic vote. Pirate crews voted for their captains in formal proceedings that followed established protocols. Sometimes before a voyage began, when a new crew assembled. Sometimes after a successful mutiny against a previous captain. Sometimes when casualties created a vacancy. The voting was completely direct. Every member of the crew had exactly one vote, regardless of experience, skill, or time served. No electoral college, no representatives. Pure majority rule. Whoever got the most votes became captain. This sounds democratic and egalitarian. It was both those things. But democracy is a dangerous weapon when your constituents are armed criminals with no loyalty beyond their immediate self-interest and survival. A captain held power only as long as the crew believed he could make them rich and keep them alive through successful attacks and skillful evasion of naval forces. The moment that belief failed, they removed him through another vote. No appeals process, no second chances, no retirement with honors. Just immediate removal from command, and often from life itself. The process had formal structure. When a vacancy occurred, or when enough crew members demanded a new vote, the quartermaster would call an assembly. The entire crew gathered on deck. Nominations were made from the floor. Anyone could nominate anyone, including themselves. There were no qualifications required beyond being a crew member in good standing. The nominees would speak, make their case, promise success, outline their vision. Then the voting happened, usually by show of hands, though some ships used other methods, like dropping marked tokens into a box. The counting was public. Everyone saw the result. The winner took command immediately. What's striking is how this created perpetual insecurity. A naval captain, once appointed, held his position until death, retirement, or court-martial. Could make unpopular decisions knowing his authority came from the admiralty, not crew approval. A merchant captain owned his ship or was appointed by owners, had legal backing, contractual authority. Could discipline crews and make hard choices. A pirate captain had none of these protections. His authority rested entirely on continued crew satisfaction. This made strategic planning nearly impossible. How do you make long-term decisions when your position might end tomorrow? The pirate articles, the written codes that governed pirate ships and defined their internal law, made this vulnerability explicit and systematic. Most pirate articles included detailed provisions for removing a captain through democratic process. The crew could call a vote of no confidence at any time. No specific cause was required beyond general dissatisfaction. If the majority wanted a new captain, they got one immediately. The deposed captain became an ordinary crew member with no special privileges. if he was lucky and the crew bore no particular ill will. If the crew blamed him for failures or suspected him of cheating them on plunder division, if they believed he'd taken unnecessary risks or made decisions that got crew members killed, he faced trial under the same articles he'd enforced as captain. The punishments available under pirate articles ranged from reduced shares of plunder to flogging, to marooning on deserted islands, to immediate execution by hanging or shooting. The articles existed ostensibly to protect crew members from tyrannical captains who might abuse their authority. But they also made every captain vulnerable to the mob he was supposed to lead, created a system where popularity mattered more than competence, where short-term crew satisfaction trumped long-term strategic success. Specific articles survive in historical records. Bartholomew Roberts's articles, captured when his ship was taken, detailed exact procedures for captain removal. Any crew member could call for a vote. The quartermaster had to honor the request and convene the crew within 12 hours. The current captain could speak in his own defense, but couldn't vote. Simple majority of crew votes determined the outcome. If removed, the captain had to surrender all symbols of office immediately. His weapons, his cabin, his share certificates, everything. He became just another crew member subject to the new captain's orders. Roberts himself operated under these rules constantly, knew every day that his captaincy depended on majority support that could evaporate with a single failed prize or unlucky encounter. Compare this to naval or merchant command structures. A Royal Navy captain was appointed by the Admiralty. He held absolute authority granted by the state. Mutiny against naval captain was treason, punishable by hanging. The crew knew this. They knew that even if mutiny succeeded temporarily, the full power of the Royal Navy would hunt them down. This knowledge kept most crews obedient even under brutal conditions. Merchant captains had similar authority, backed by commercial law and maritime tradition. Neither faced the constant threat of removal that pirate captains endured. Pirate captains had to balance impossible tensions that would have broken most leaders. They needed to maintain strict discipline to keep the ship operational and coordinate complex attacks. Ships required constant maintenance. Sails needed mending, rigging needed adjustment, guns needed cleaning, watches needed standing. Without discipline, the ship became unworkable and vulnerable. But harsh discipline risked angering the crew and provoking immediate removal votes. A captain who flogged a crew member for drunkenness on watch might find himself voted out the next day by that crew member's friends. They needed to claim larger shares of plunder for themselves to signal status and authority, to demonstrate that captaincy came with rewards, to attract ambitious crew members to support their leadership. But taking too large a share violated the egalitarian principles that pirate crews demanded and would trigger accusations of greed. The articles typically specified shares. Captain got 2, quartermaster got 1.5, regular crew got 1 each. But interpreting these shares during actual plunder division created endless conflict. What counted as plunder? Did the captain's share come before or after ship expenses? Could the captain claim first choice of captured weapons or goods? Every decision about division was political calculation. They needed to make strategic decisions about which ships to attack and which to avoid, about which waters to sail and which to abandon, about when to careen the ship for maintenance and when to keep hunting. These decisions required experience and judgment. But if those decisions led to poor captures or dangerous encounters with naval vessels, the crew blamed the captain personally and considered replacement. A captain who avoided a fight because he judged the risk too high looked cowardly to crews that wanted action. A captain who took a fight and lost men looked reckless. There was no safe choice. Every decision had critics. The mathematics of this situation were brutal. A naval captain commanded through institutional authority. A pirate captain commanded through results. Every voyage that didn't produce significant plunder weakened his position. Every decision that endangered the crew without corresponding reward damaged his credibility. Every conflict with powerful crew members created factions that could vote him out. The job had no security, no guarantee of tomorrow. just constant pressure to produce results while keeping 90 armed criminals satisfied with your leadership. Historical records document the turnover. Bartholomew Roberts served under 3 different captains before being elected captain himself. Each of his predecessors was removed by the crew. One was killed in battle, and the crew immediately voted for his replacement. Another was voted out after a series of unsuccessful cruises. The third was marooned after being accused of keeping extra plunder for himself. Roberts succeeded because he was competent and lucky, but he knew what awaited him if either quality failed. His own crew would remove him the same way they'd removed his predecessors. The fear manifested in specific behaviors. Pirate captains were notoriously generous with plunder distribution. They took larger shares than ordinary crew members, but not dramatically larger. Typical pirate articles gave the captain 2 shares, the quartermaster 1.5 shares, and regular crew 1 share each. Compare this to merchant vessels where captains might earn 10 or 20 times what common sailors earned. Pirate captains accepted smaller differentials because demanding more risked accusations of greed and triggered removal votes. Captains also consulted crews on major decisions. Before attacking a well-defended prize, before changing cruising grounds, before making port, captains called councils. The crew voted on the course of action. This wasn't altruism, it was survival strategy. If a risky attack failed, the captain could point to the vote and say the crew had approved the decision. If he'd ordered the attack unilaterally and it failed, the crew blamed him alone. Shared decision-making distributed blame and reduced the chance of mutiny. The quartermaster position existed specifically to check captain's power. The quartermaster was elected separately from the captain. He controlled the division of plunder. He adjudicated disputes between crew members. He could call votes to remove the captain. Essentially, the quartermaster represented the crew's interests against potential captain overreach. This created a balance of power, but it also meant captains constantly navigated between their own authority and the quartermaster's oversight. The wrong conflict with the quartermaster could turn the entire crew against a captain. Edward Lowe, one of the most violent and psychologically unstable pirates of the Golden Age, was eventually overthrown by his own crew in 1724. The mutiny happened after Lowe, in a drunken rage over a minor slight, killed a crew member execution style for a trivial infraction. The victim had supposedly questioned one of Lowe's orders during an attack, had suggested an alternative approach. Lowe took this as challenge to his authority. He shot the man in the head in front of the entire crew. This wasn't discipline. It was murder. It was tyranny. It was exactly what the articles were written to prevent. The crew called an immediate emergency vote. They didn't wait for the quartermaster, didn't follow normal protocols. They simply gathered on deck and shouted for Lowe's removal. Someone produced weapons. Others blocked Lowe's access to his cabin where he kept his personal arsenal. The vote was overwhelming. Lowe was removed from command instantly. They didn't kill him immediately. That would have been mercy. Instead, they placed him in a small boat with 2 crew members who'd remained loyal to him. 3 men total. They gave them no supplies, no weapons, no navigation tools, no chance of survival. Then they cut the boat loose and sailed away. Lowe, who had terrorized the Atlantic shipping lanes for years, who had killed hundreds in brutal torture sessions, who had burned ships with prisoners aboard, died of thirst in a small boat drifting in the Caribbean. His violence, which worked perfectly on defenseless merchants and captured crews, destroyed him when he directed it at his own men. The crew's message was clear. A captain could be cruel to enemies, but directing that cruelty inward toward the crew violated the fundamental compact and meant instant removal and death. Charles Vane, another notorious pirate known for exceptional cruelty to prisoners and merchant crews, was deposed in 1718 after refusing to attack a French man of war that his crew wanted to engage. The situation developed over several days. Vane's ship encountered the French warship in open water. The warship was a fourth-rate ship of the line with 50 guns. Vane commanded a sloop with 12 guns. The disparity was absurd. Any engagement would result in Vane's ship being destroyed within minutes. The French had training, discipline, and overwhelming firepower. But the crew had been at sea for weeks without taking a significant prize. They were restless, frustrated, looking for action and plunder. When they saw the French ship, several crew members argued it could be taken by surprise boarding action. Vane tried to explain the tactical impossibility, tried to point out that the French crew alone outnumbered them 2-1 before accounting for the artillery advantage. The crew didn't care about tactics. They wanted to fight. They called a vote on whether to engage. The crew voted overwhelmingly to attack. Vane, recognizing it was suicide and that his responsibility as captain included not getting everyone killed in futile actions, refused to give the attack order. This was mutiny in reverse, the captain refusing to execute the crew's democratic decision. The crew immediately called another vote to remove Vane from command and elected Jack Rackham, who'd been quartermaster and had supported the attack plan, as new captain. Vane was given a small sloop and a handful of loyal crew members as a consolation prize. This was actually merciful by pirate standards. The crew could have marooned him on a sandbar or executed him for cowardice. Instead, they let him leave with enough resources to possibly survive. But the point stands absolutely clear. Vane's caution, which was almost certainly correct from tactical and survival perspectives, ended his command because the crew wanted aggression regardless of risk. Democracy without expertise. Majority rule without strategic thinking. The crew's will superseded the captain's judgment, even when that judgment might have saved their lives. The marooning punishment deserves special detailed attention because it haunted the nightmares of every pirate captain. It was the quintessential pirate punishment for deposed captains who'd lost crew confidence but hadn't committed specific crimes deserving immediate death. The process was formalized in pirate articles with ritualistic precision. The condemned man, usually a former captain but sometimes a quartermaster or other officer who'd fallen from grace, was given specific items: a pistol with exactly one shot, a bottle of water, usually a single quart, sometimes a small amount of food, dried meat or hardtack, enough for maybe 2 or 3 days. Nothing else. No tools, no extra ammunition, no shelter materials. He was rowed to a barren island or sandbar. The crew selected locations carefully, small enough that no ships would stop there, remote enough that passing vessels wouldn't see signals, barren enough that no food or fresh water existed. The condemned man was put ashore. The boat returned to the ship. The ship sailed away. The marooned man watched the sails disappear over the horizon, knowing he'd never see another human being. The pistol shot was the only mercy in this sentence. When the water ran out after 2 or 3 days under Caribbean sun, when thirst became unbearable, when the realization set in that rescue was impossible, the condemned could choose a quick death over the slow agony of dying from dehydration. This punishment haunted captains in ways that hanging or shooting didn't. It appeared in pirate articles as an explicit option for dealing with failed leadership. Crews discussed it openly, debated which islands or sandbars would make suitable marooning sites. The threat of marooning hung over every captain who disappointed his crew, who made bad decisions, who showed weakness. It was worse than death because it was death plus isolation, plus the psychological torture of waiting for the end, knowing you were abandoned, knowing your crew rejected you so completely they didn't even want your body buried at sea, knowing you'd die alone on a barren rock while your former crew divided your possessions and voted for your replacement. The psychology of this fear-shaped command style. Successful pirate captains cultivated specific personas. They were bold to the point of recklessness in combat, showing the crew they wouldn't avoid risks. They were generous with plunder, demonstrating they weren't greedy. They were cruel to enemies, but relatively lenient with crew members, showing strength without turning it inward. They consulted crews and respected votes, showing deference to democratic principles. This combination of traits wasn't natural leadership. It was calculated performance designed to prevent mutiny. Blackbeard exemplified this calculated performance approach to maintaining command. His terrifying appearance wasn't natural or accidental. It was carefully constructed theater designed for specific purposes. The smoking fuses in his beard lit before battle to create a demonic appearance. The multiple weapons, 6 pistols, and several knives displayed prominently on his person. The wild reputation cultivated through stories he encouraged about his supernatural origins and immunity to normal weapons. All of this served dual purposes. It intimidated enemies into surrendering without fight. But more importantly, it impressed his crew. His crew saw the fear he inspired in merchants and naval opponents, saw how often ships surrendered at first sight of his flag because his reputation preceded him. This made their work easier and safer. Fewer battles meant fewer casualties. More surrenders meant more plunder with less risk. When he blockaded Charleston in 1718 and took prominent hostages, including members of the Colonial Council, his crew saw boldness and daring. When he shared plunder generously, giving crew members first pick of personal items from prizes and taking only his allotted 2 shares, they saw fairness. When he consulted them on major decisions about which waters to sail and which prizes to pursue, they saw respect for their input and adherence to democratic principles. This performance kept him in command longer than most pirate captains of his era. But even Blackbeard eventually faced serious crew tensions that threatened his position. His final months show signs of crew restlessness. Some historians argue his fatal final encounter with Royal Navy forces, led by Lieutenant Robert Maynard, happened partly because his crew was becoming restive after a period without major prizes, and he desperately needed a dramatic success to maintain their confidence and prevent a removal vote. He attacked Maynard's ships despite signs they were naval vessels rather than merchants, needed the victory to shore up his position, died fighting partly because the alternative was losing command to his own crew. The ultimate irony is that the very democracy that theoretically protected crews from tyranny made captains paranoid and defensive. A naval captain could be harsh because his authority was backed by law and force. A pirate captain had to constantly manage his image and relationships, had to deliver results, had to avoid mistakes, had to sense when crew sentiment was turning against him and take action before a vote could be called. This constant political maneuvering was exhausting. Many captains probably died from stress and lack of sleep as much as from violence or disease. Economic incentives made mutiny attractive. If a crew believed their captain was incompetent or unlucky, replacing him might improve their fortunes. If they believed he was taking excessive plunder, removing him meant larger shares for everyone else. If they wanted to change strategy, attacking different targets or sailing to different waters, a new captain aligned with their preferences could be elected. Mutiny wasn't just about anger or revenge. It was rational economic behavior. Crews acted in their collective self-interest. Captains who didn't serve that interest were removed. Information asymmetry created additional paranoia. Captains never knew for certain what crew members were saying in private. Couldn't know if factions were forming. Couldn't know if the quartermaster was turning against them. Had to read crew sentiment from indirect signals. A lack of enthusiasm during an attack. Grumbling about plunder division. Groups gathering and dispersing when the captain approached. These signs might mean nothing, or they might mean a vote was being planned. Captains had to constantly assess and reassess their security. Some captains used informants, loyal crew members who'd report on conversations and sentiment. But this was dangerous. If discovered, it enraged the crew and guaranteed removal. The captain had to trust that his informants wouldn't betray him or use their position to manipulate him. Trust was scarce commodity on pirate ships. Everyone had betrayed someone to become a pirate. No one assumed loyalty from anyone else. The captain lived in a web of suspicion where any alliance could dissolve instantly. Violence was always an option. A captain facing imminent removal could try to kill the opposition leaders before they could call a vote. This occasionally worked. More often it failed and made the situation worse. A captain who murdered crew members to retain power proved he was exactly the tyrant they feared. Even if he won the immediate confrontation, he'd created enemies who would wait for opportunity to strike back. Preemptive violence was a desperation move that usually hastened the end it was meant to prevent. The alternative was to sense when control was slipping and leave before being forcibly removed. Some captains, recognizing they'd lost their crew's confidence, negotiated departures. They'd take a small boat, some supplies, perhaps a few loyal followers, and leave voluntarily. This avoided the humiliation of removal and the potential violence that came with it. But it meant abandoning everything they'd built: their ship, their position, their shares of accumulated plunder. Walking away voluntarily was surrender. Most captains couldn't bring themselves to do it until it was too late. The historical record shows that very few pirate captains died of old age or retired peacefully. Most died violently. Naval action, merchant resistance, disease, and mutiny killed them in roughly equal proportions. The ones killed by their own crews rarely appear in the dramatic histories. Those histories focus on battles with naval vessels and attacks on merchant shipping. But the internal dynamics, the constant threat of removal, the fear of your own crew, shaped pirate operations as much as external threats did. Consider the strategic implications. Pirate crews made decisions democratically, but those decisions weren't always wise. Crews voted for attacks on targets that offered good plunder, even when those attacks were extremely risky. Voted to sail to dangerous waters because those waters had rich shipping. Voted against retreating even when discretion was tactically sound. The captain's role was to execute these decisions and somehow keep the crew alive and successful. If the democratically chosen strategy failed, the crew blamed the captain for the failure even though they'd voted for the strategy. The captain bore responsibility without having full authority. This is a recipe for failure. Smart captains learned to manipulate the voting process. They'd present options in ways that guided the crew toward the captain's preferred choice. They'd arrange for influential crew members to speak in favor of certain options before the vote. They'd time votes for moments when crew sentiment was favorable. This was political skill as much as maritime skill. A captain who couldn't navigate crew politics didn't last regardless of his sailing or fighting abilities. The role required being part military commander, part politician, part psychologist, all while maintaining the persona of a fearless pirate who took what he wanted by force. The comparison to legitimate authority structures reveals fundamental structural weakness in pirate organizations. States centralize power and violence through institutions. Navies and armies have clear chains of command, backed by monopolies on legitimate force. Individuals can't challenge commanders without facing overwhelming institutional response. A sailor who strikes an officer faces court-martial and execution. A soldier who refuses orders faces firing squad. The threat isn't just from the immediate commander, but from the entire institutional apparatus behind that commander. The British Navy, the Spanish Army, these were institutions that would pursue mutineers to the ends of the earth to preserve command authority. Pirates, lacking these institutional foundations, relied entirely on personal authority and crew consent. This made pirate organizations remarkably flexible and responsive to member desires in ways that rigid naval hierarchies could never match. Crews could remove incompetent leaders immediately, could change strategy based on collective input, could ensure plunder distribution reflected egalitarian values rather than hierarchical privilege. But this same flexibility also made them unstable and perpetually vulnerable to internal collapse whenever crew satisfaction wavered. The same democratic principles that attracted people to piracy in the first place, the promise of equality and voice in decision-making, undermined the command structures necessary for sustained success against organized opposition. Pirate ships were internally democratic, but externally predatory. They needed strong leadership to succeed in combat and evade capture. But their internal democracy made strong leadership nearly impossible to maintain consistently. This contradiction was built into the system and could never be fully resolved. This explains why pirate organizations never grew into lasting institutions. Individual pirate crews might be successful for months or even years, but they couldn't build enduring power structures, couldn't establish lasting hierarchies, couldn't create institutions that survived beyond individual leaders. Every pirate captain knew his position was temporary, knew that his authority extended only until the next vote, knew that his crew could remove him whenever they chose. This knowledge prevented long-term planning, prevented investment in anything beyond immediate plunder. ensured that piracy remained a short-term predatory activity rather than evolving into organized criminal enterprise. The fear of mutiny was rational and completely justified by historical evidence. Pirate captains who forgot this reality, who believed their position was secure based on past success, who stopped performing the constant political management their role required, were swiftly and brutally removed. The ones who survived longest were paradoxically the ones who never stopped being afraid, who never assumed tomorrow's loyalty based on yesterday's victories, who treated every single day as a political campaign to maintain their position through results and performance. This constant fear was psychologically exhausting. It aged captains quickly, made them paranoid and suspicious, made them cruel in ways that eventually turned crews against them and created the very conditions they feared. The fear of mutiny often created the very conditions that made mutiny inevitable through a self-fulfilling prophecy of mistrust and defensive behavior. For pirate captains, death in battle might have been preferable to mutiny. Battle was quick, honorable in pirate terms. A captain who died fighting maintained his reputation, but mutiny was humiliation, evidence that you'd failed at the fundamental requirement of leadership, that your own crew rejected you, that you weren't skilled enough or lucky enough or ruthless enough to hold their loyalty. A captain killed by his crew died twice, once physically, once reputationally, and in a culture that valued reputation above almost everything, that second death was worse. Mutiny was the crime every pirate captain feared more than death because it was death combined with dishonor, delivered by the very men whose respect and loyalty were supposed to validate the captain's authority and power.